The four principles to make the solder flow. It needs to be clean, it needs to be well fit, it needs to have flux, and it needs to have heat. So, step one, to clean it. I wiped it off as well as I could, took everything down to tinning. Now I'm just going to take that denatured alcohol, and that's going to kill any little germs or get rid of any little pieces of dust that remains. And I'm putting that both on the bottom of the hook and right on its footprint where it's going to go on the lead pipe. So that takes care of the clean. For well fit, there's not really any dents here, so that really takes care of itself. That's going to sit nice and flush right on there. I'm just going to put a little clip on it to keep everything in place. Now, if there was a big old dent in the lead pipe, I would have to take that out first to have any hope of this getting secured there. But there's nothing like that, so it's nice and flush right against the lead pipe there. So the fitting part's already taken care of itself. Needs to have flux. This is where the paste flux is nice. I'm going to pre-flux it just by putting a thin layer of that paste that I showed you earlier right on the bottom of the pinky hook. So I just kind of spread that on there. You don't want too much because it is going to melt at a pretty low temperature, and you don't want it running all over the instrument, even though it has very little acid in it. That could do something to the lacquer, and I want to protect the finish as much as possible, so don't overdo it. Real thin layer, almost like when we were doing contact cement on the sax neck corks and clarinet tenon corks. The thinnest layer you can get while also making sure that you covered the entire surface. So I'm going to do my best to cover up that footprint just to make everything look as nice as possible. And then this is just a solder clip I got from Allied Supply. Nothing fancy at all. It's just what's going to hold it in place. Unless the player wanted the hook in a different place, I am just going to go with the footprint and go with installing it right where it was originally meant to be. A little bit of extra flux sticking out here, so I am going to preemptively clean that up. Okay, my recommendation when you go to solder, I like to have the solder in my dominant hand, the torch in my non-dominant hand. So for me, that's solder in the right, torch in the left. It's very tempting to want the flame in your right hand, but I think you want that extra control of your dominant hand to have the solder in that. Less important to have for what to be exactly accurate with the flame. So just my recommendation, try it any way you want. So I'm going to start just kind of generally heating it up, get that flux melted. And now conventional wisdom, you would think like, okay, I'm going to put the solder in right where I'm heating it up. You actually want to do the opposite of that, because the solder, remember the fourth step to make the solder flow, right? It's going to follow the heat. So I'm actually going to heat on one side, and I'm going to put the solder in from the other side. And you actually want to heat it up, heat it up, heat it up, take it away, and then put the solder in. If you try to do both at once, it's just going to, I can probably put this on video even. The solder is just going to melt off right away, and you're never going to get it to where you want it to go. So I'm heating it. The end of that dark blue flame there, the point at the end, that's the hottest part, so that's the part that I want right on the instrument. Constantly moving it. Let's see if we can get the solder to go in. Oh yeah, it's going. So I'm kind of starting at one end, and I'm using the heat to draw it so it takes up that whole footprint. You want to give it the best chance of not clumping up, so you've got good coverage. And remember, this thing fell off once, so we want it to have the best chance of not falling off again. And I think we're pretty good there. take my rag and wipe everything down. Yeah, it didn't really have any spill out. I'm just kind of getting rid of any of the flux that poured out. And then precision fit on this isn't a big deal, so I'm okay to spray this just to speed things up. You don't have to, but it would probably take a full 5 minutes for this to cool down to room temperature. So if you were in a hurry, cool everything down faster just with some plain old water. Check it out, that feels pretty strong. And on something like this, the true test that I like to give it is, let's see, can I hold the whole trumpet by the pinky hook? And yeah, I'm putting all the weight just on the pinky hook and it's not coming off, so I'd say that's a fairly strong solder job.